Employees of Walmart. What's the weirdest thing you've ever seen at work? Not an employee. Saw a drunk woman took a crap right on the little girl's toy aisle. Then she turned to some little girl, probably no more than 5 years old, watching her and yelled at her. You want to eat that up, Dunshaw? Because yours mama isn't putting food on your table no more. Story 2. A few years back, I worked at Walmart as an assistant manager. I was working a from 12 to 10 shift and the overnight manager called off sick. So I stayed until 4 a.m. so somebody working mornings could come in early and we could have it covered. Anyway, it was February in northern Illinois. The temp outside at 2 a.m. was about 6 degrees. At about 2:30, I get a call over the walkie-talkie to come up to the pharmacy and that, "You've got to see this." I went up to pharmacy and see 2 younger guys. One was dressed in a lifeguard's outfit, complete with a thick coating of sunscreen on his nose. The other one was dressed in a complete walrus costume. I half followed these guys through the store to make sure that they weren't going to do something stupid like pull fire alarms, etc., and caught up with what everybody was doing stocking shelves. I lost contact with them because they weren't bothering anybody and just went about my business. About a half hour later, I made my way up to the front registers and asked the cashier if she had seen the lifeguard and the walrus. She said that not only did she see them, but they made a purchase. The lifeguard found some sunscreen in the clearance aisle, and the walrus got a pack of salmon from the seafood department. They paid with cash and went on their way. Story 3. Out of high school, I got a job at a local Walmart as a 29 aka cart pusher. Anyways, it was almost closing time, and I ended up helping a customer take out some merchandise. Right behind the customer service desk, exit doors, was what appeared to be the top of a chocolate ice cream, swirl and all on the ground. I assumed it fell off someone's ice cream cone from McDonald's. I holler that I'll be right back to clean it up. I get back inside and notice this ice cream has not melted one bit. Curiosity got the best of me, so I decided to lean down and get a whiff of it just to confirm it was ice cream. It was not ice cream. Someone somehow managed to drop a turd right in plain view with an ice cream swirl shape. That was 10 years ago, and it still blows my mind to this day. Story 4. Ex-employee of the produce department. Someone returned a mango to the store saying they didn't need it anymore. Was returned cut up into 3 different slices and stitched back up with Scotch tape. What? Story 5. A bunch. A guy shopping with long hair, dressed in a brown terry bathrobe, bunny slippers, the real thing, how do you even find these? Straw gardening hat, and sunglasses. Another employee was assisting him with shopping and reaching objects on shelves. People using the fitting rooms as a bathroom or leaving feminine products inside. Yep, a girl puked on me. I got to go home early that day. In the grocery section, a pretty big tall guy was grabbing onto the banana display, the kind that hangs from the ceiling on a 30-foot rope, and shot-putting the bananas so far, they swung out over the meats section, almost hit the deli sign, then came swinging back and he caught it. He stopped when he saw me watching him. Kids throwing those pop-it fireworks everywhere while running through the store, freaking out the managers as they set some off in the chemicals and cleaners aisle. Story 6. I worked at Walmart for about a year, but was not technically a Walmart employee. I was part of a company that handles the books and music. Anyway, I usually tried to keep to myself and never really talked to anyone. Every now and then, there'd be a stray employee that would browse through the books, killing time, I suppose, while I was stocking. This one guy would come by maybe once a week, chat for maybe 10 minutes, and leave. He was a little weird, but he never really creeped me out or anything. Mostly we just talked about what books we like or what was coming out soon. One day, I really wish I could remember how this conversation started. He tells me that his ancestors are Cherokee Indians. At this point, I'm thinking, yeah, sure, buddy. Where I am from, everyone claims to have Cherokee background. Is this a common thing? Blonde hair, blue eyes, and freckles. Yep, gotta be Cherokee for sure. That's not the point of my story, though. This man proceeds to explain to me that the other side of his family are wood elves, and that the wood elves had close relationships with the Cherokee Indians. He proved this point to me by showing me how pointy his ears were. I could not think of a single thing to say to this guy, so I just kind of smiled and nodded in some sort of agreement. Walmart can be such a weird place. Story 7. Found a woman passed out naked in sporting goods about 2 a.m. while working nights. We had no idea how no one noticed her, because we found articles of her clothing all over the store, including in the back storage area. Called police and ambulance. She was very high and was unable to communicate at all. Story 8. I worked as a third-shift stock boy for Walmart throughout college, one of the most interesting jobs I have ever had. One of my favorite stories was one night about 3 a.m., a bunch of kids came in wearing bandanas and riding adult-sized big wheels about as fast as they could. They made it clear across the store to the soda and stole about 5 2-liters and a bunch of chips and snacks. The entire staff just watched this happen too. Seemed par for the course. Story 9. Not me, but my cousin worked at Walmart for a few years, and he had some stories. 1. Cashier shift at night, so not many people. He was scanning some couple's things, a man and woman. They were the only ones in line. Well, he's scanning their things, and before he can scan some things at the back of their pile, they start hiding them. The man grabbed a bottle of shampoo and shoved it into his pants to make it look like he had a huge junk. The woman not only hid some gum and food in her purse, but she also shoved things into her bra. My cousin noticed and had to call security over to take the things from them, and it was rather awkward from what he tells me. 2. He was in the snacks aisle, like chips and stuff, and he was stocking up the shelves with Lay's and Doritos and whatever else goes there. A woman passes by him, and he doesn't really notice or acknowledge her. Right when he's moving on to the next shelf to restock it, the woman falls over, face first, and crap herself. I can't make this up. From what he tells me, it was loud and wet and incredibly gross. 3. Cousin was in cart duty, which was pretty much pushing a long line of carts into the cart stations outside of Walmart. It was a night shift, and he was just about to go him. And by one of the stations, he saw a man in all black with a mask, looking like he was trying to break into a car, but to no avail. My cousin called out to him to see what he was doing, and he started sprinting in the opposite direction. Due to my cousin not knowing anything about the guy, he couldn't really file a police report or tell the police, so he let it slide. Note, nothing has happened as far as I know, but my cousin is a git. 4. Cousin was back on stocking shift around the dairy place with all the yogurt and milk and cheese and whatnot. A few kids came by, about 12 or 13, and were getting the jugs of milk, probably inspired by gallon smashing, and were looking around cautiously. But since there were people everywhere, the kids couldn't really do it and have the same appeal as gallon smashing had. These kids altogether probably had 5 or 6 jugs of milk, and my cousin comes by and asks if he can help them with anything. Time passes and the kids move on to another aisle with their jugs, while my cousin subtly follows them. In an aisle with no one around, a kid with a jug throws it on the ground, and obviously the jug explodes, and this kid slips into the milk. My cousin calls for a supervisor and tells him he'll have to pay for it. Well, since they're kids, they didn't want to, so they booked it. The kid at the front had 2 jugs and legitimately slipped, which made them both explode, and all 3 of the kids fell and are covered in chocolate milk. My cousin said it was the most justifying thing he's ever seen. Story 10 was at my local Walmart once. Fire alarms go off. Jewelry counter is smoldering. Evacuate? No. Fire alarm silenced. Shoppers allowed to keep shopping with smoke fogging half the store. Story 11. I have many stories along these lines from me 4 years at Walmart, but this is probably the best moment. It was Saturday afternoon around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was sort of just moping around like usual. I was a customer service manager, so anything that involved a crazy customer usually went through me first, and today was no different. A middle-aged lady came up to me and asked if I could page a certain customer because her elderly father was out in their truck and was screaming out of the truck door for someone to come find his daughter. Well, I paged and didn't get a response in the usual amount of time, so I went outside to see if I could give the guy some help with anything. I didn't make it past the first set of doors before I saw a commotion, and it took no time at all to figure out what the issue was. The elderly man was attempting to get out of the truck, ass first, and was, what appeared to be, taking off his pants. The lady that came in to ask me to page was apparently not the only person that had been concerned with this elderly gentleman screaming, because there was now. I crap you not, a police vehicle already there with his lights on, and there was an ambulance on. It's way into the parking lot. Nobody knew exactly what to do, so the emergency responders simply asked if he needed assistance and if he was safe and unharmed. The man, if he did in fact hear, made no acknowledgement to their presence. He continued to pull his pants completely around his ankles and crap, what can only be described as a chocolate fountain turned upside down out of ass. It was a massive load of doo-doo and was basically liquid syrup and chunks of undigested items. At this point, an additional ambulance had arrived and 1 fire truck. He crapped for what seemed like ages before simply pulling his pants up, no wipe mind you, and slid back over to his rightful place in the passenger seat. Not a single duck given. The police went over to the window and made sure he was okay, and the paramedics went in and found his daughter, who was completely oblivious to the paging that had been occurring until she was already checking out. My manager at the time was standing next to me and turned to me and told me to run and grab the body fluids kit and some bleach off the shelf and go take care of that with the janitors. Both the maintenance person on the clock and myself refused outright. We both told her we were paid nowhere near enough to go clean that poo pool up. She must have known we were serious and simply grabbed the kit and did it herself. I felt bad for her, but I couldn't do it. It was hot outside, and I can only imagine the smell would only make me add to the mess. Story 12. A man once peed on a display. After stumbling back to us, he said he couldn't find the bathroom. It was 10 feet in front of the display. Then proceeded to walk to the front, ride on one of the kiddie rides, and get kicked out of the store. Story 13. Actually, since you mentioned employees of Walmart, let me just use this thread to idiot about my experience as a Walmart employee. I got a job at a Walmart they were building, so we were basically stocking shelves and stuff for the store opening. I could only work from 5:30 to 11 o'clock, and so I was usually by myself most of the evening. My managers would even forget about me. Anyways, this one other employee would walk by and we would say hi and stuff like that. No big deal. I went out on my break. I'm a 20-year-old female. He's a 48-year-old male. And he was sitting in his car. He told me to come over, so I was like, okay. I got in and we smoked a cigarette and talked. This is our first real conversation, all in my 15-minute break. He mentions the state made him move out of his house because of accusations of him abuse his daughter. He also said it wasn't his first accusation, and that he was accused of abuse, another girl too. He said a bunch of weird little things, like how he was promiscuous when he was younger, and that I look like I would be too. After my 15-minute break, I went inside to get back to work and try and avoid him. A little while later, it was my last 15 minutes. Break, and he saw me walking out and asked where I was headed, and I said I was going to smoke. He said he would join me and that he could use the nicotine. Well, we get out there and I'm already uncomfortable because of what he's previously said. Well, then he mentions he's always had a thing for younger girls like me and that he was talking to a 19-year-old girl on some cuddle website where girls will come over and cuddle. Then he said he got a message on Kik from his 16-year-old daughter's friend saying, "Hey baby, can I come stay the night at your place tonight?" And he replied, "I'm off at 1 if that's not too late." So I hope back inside and ask a manager to work in another department because he really made me uncomfortable. I then just went to the bathroom and cried. Another manager came in, saw me, and took me to the office. And I had to tell her and another manager what happened and write down my statement so they could get it over to HR. Well, damn, 3 days later, they bring me in and damn fire me because apparently on my break one night, I was in the middle of the parking lot and I said the word duck. That was their reason to fire me. I think they fired me 3 days later because it was less paperwork than to file a harassment claim and that it would look really bad against a store that wasn't even open yet. Story 14. This one time, while working in electronics, this dude came up to one of my coworkers and said he hit himself on one of the displays and that he needed medical attention. We threw a crafty off-brand Band-Aid on his wound and sent him on his way. A couple hours later, I noticed something wedged in between two of the displays and I pulled it out. It was an empty prepaid phone case with a large slit down the side of the plastic mold and a blood stain on the exposed cardboard packaging. Turns out the guy had hit his hand open while trying to steal one of our phones and had the audacity to ask us for help. Story 15. My mom works at a Walmart down here in Miami. She's always telling me about the crazy crap she sees at work. They found a lot of goat heads sealed in buckets in the parking lot. They suspect it has something to do with Santeria. She once had a mentally handicapped employee crap in the drain in the bathroom. She had an employee pass out at work and never wake up. The guy just passed away on the spot. My ex also worked as a cashier at a Walmart in his hometown and told me about this one lady. He was ringing up her purchase and she kept trying to talk to him about football. He really doesn't give a duck about football, so he wasn't paying much attention to her. He rang up something, I think it was a TV or something expensive like that, and noticed the price was way lower than he had expected it. So he flipped over the box and saw that she had out a different sticker over the barcode. She was only trying to get him engaged in small talk so he wouldn't notice. He called over his supervisor and let him deal with it. I was visiting my mom at work one day, and one of her associates comes up to us. She was this older lady, and she began telling my mom that it was nice working with her and blah, blah, blah. Then she tells us about her plans after she leaves Walmart. She says she's going to be opening up her own theme park with her husband, and she even gives us a name and a location. Then she tells us, as a thank you, she's willing to let my mom and I go to this theme park free for a few days. At this point, I was like, duck, yeah, this sounds legit. After the lady left, my mom told me the lady was delusional and she was actually having financial problems. Story 16. I work in the deli. I once saw a woman on a motor scooter throw a rotisserie chicken at her husband because he had brought her the wrong item. It slid about 10 feet as the door greet, and I just stared at each other, lost. She drove off, leaving her husband behind. I have never seen a man look so broken down. Also someone huffing those cans of keyboard duster in the bathroom, and someone asleep on the toilet, pants down and snoring. Story 17. One time this woman saw some ice cream in one of our ads, and we didn't actually carry it because we aren't a super center. Needless to say, I almost got punched in the face. She couldn't fathom the idea of us not carrying this raspberry ice cream. She was talking like, "What? No, it's in your ad. Why, where is it? It should be right here." After explaining in fine detail the reason we didn't carry it, she got right in my face and yelled at me at the top of her lungs. Her boyfriend just stood there and watched without emotion. She was most definitely high on something. Also just today, an old woman crap in the freezer aisle and walked away. It smelled really, really bad. Story 18. One time, I was coming off break and passed two older men. They looked a little odd, but I only caught a glance at one of them at first, which caused me to stop and turn around. Two men in what looked like they're mid-50, with tanned skin wearing Bavarian barmaid dresses, complete with shoes and pigtails, were walking through the store shopping. I made eye contact for a moment, and I got the most serious look from one of them. They were acting like it wasn't unusual at all. To this day, I'm still not sure what was going on. There were no events in the area at that time where people would be dressed up. Story 19. Had a guy scream at the top of his lungs to my coworker because he wasn't allowed to pick up a site to store order. His name wasn't on the package. And he freaked the duck out until a manager had to come and defuse the situation. Another coworker of mine had to check the men's bathrooms for a drunk guy who pissed everywhere in produce, damn gross, and passed out somewhere in the store. This isn't weird, but it's my biggest damn pet peeve when parents let their kids lay down in the bottom shelf thing where you put water. Big things. I stay clear of them because the kid's head is sticking out of the bottom and I'm scared I'm going to kick them or something. Been an employee for roughly over a year in the electronics department. Story 20. I was buying shoes at a Walmart and I heard someone yelling in the next aisle. I peek around the corner and there's a man holding a pair of rubber rain boots being yelled at by one of the employees. He suddenly drops the boots and threw his hands up in the air for some reason. And when the boots hit the floor, a bunch of yellow liquid came spilling out of one of them. The guy had been taking a piss in the rubber boots. I went to pay less and got me some shoes after that. I wasn't about to try on any more Walmart shoes. Story 21. I was a customer service manager for 4 years while in college, so I have a wealth of stories. While working the service desk, a man came up to the counter requesting to return some items. I take his receipt and begin processing the return. As I'm matching up items on the receipt to the items he had, it hit me. This idiot is returning everything I purchased for my parents as Christmas presents. HDMI cable, Blu-rays, Blu-ray player, etc. I look at the location of purchase, and sure as crap, it's my parents' hometown store, 300 some odd miles south of where I'm living. I keep it cool and continue faux returning, calmly reach into my back pocket and remove my wallet and fish out my credit card. I ask the guy, I have a question. You purchased this all in Silver City, the hometown? He stumbles over his tongue for a second and says that he did and that he was visiting friends. I then proceed to have him read the last 4 digits of my card and the last 4 digits of the card on the receipt. Of course, they match, and he froze. I figured I shamed the guy enough and told him I knew how he got them and suggested he leave promptly, to which he had no objection. He walked out in shame. Story 22. My favorite was the guy who came in and said, I lost the remote, so I need a new TV. I asked him if the TV was broken. It wasn't. He just lost the remote and didn't want to bother finding it. So he wanted a new TV. I showed him our selection of universal remotes. He responded with, but then I'd have to program it. The new TV comes with a pre-programmed remote. So I sold the guy a 50-inch TV. Story 23? Oh, where to begin? 1. A certified boobologist a few summers ago. I was a cart associate. I called myself the cart commander at my local store. I was approached by a woman who tried to sell me panties from her car while I was bringing in carts. Her sales strategy was beyond poor and very uncomfortable, but interesting. She first asked me if I had a girlfriend. I answered honestly that I had recently broken up. She asks me, what'd you do, Long Dong? I know I have a name badge, but it still weirds me out when people I don't know use my first name casually. It was a peaceful breakup. So I told her honestly that nobody did anything and it just didn't work. She accuses me of lying and asks me what I did again. I didn't budge because she doesn't need to know my rather unexciting secret life. For whatever reason, she wanted to know my ex's bra size. I didn't know because it wasn't a particularly physical or long-term relationship. She starts gesturing with her hands to make imaginary cups, periodically asking me how big my ex's tits were. She said she could accurately gauge her measurements because she's a certified booologist. If I bought those panties, that apparently go on boobs, surely my ex would want me back, says the saleswoman. I told her that's not the case, and that's okay. It's back to square one for the saleswoman. Maybe I have a sister. For the next 5 minutes, I don't. Then I could always get my mother a present, right? No, that's weird. I was shocked that she even had the nerve to ask me to buy panties for my mother. But alas, I kept my composure and sold my smile for a less than stellar wage paid by the Waltons. Okay, so appealing to my ex didn't work. I'm not buying my mother underwear. She's got to make the sale. The next logical step is to ask about future girlfriends. Why don't I have a new girlfriend? Why don't I buy these lovely panties for the future? I tell her that I'm not looking to date, just days after a breakup, and that there is absolutely no one who would appreciate the gift of underwear. So she makes her final stand, buttering me up. All of a sudden, I'm a handsome and intelligent young man, and if she was into guys, she'd totally date me. Of course she would. May I take your empty cart for you now? I've got Taco Bell. Another time last year, I was working the closing shift, and I had to get the stray carts from the overflow parking lot. All 2 of them. There's a car parked there, and it's idling. Of course, one of the carts is right next to it. I go over to it and do my job. The guy behind the wheel rolls down the window and calls me over. He says, hey, I got Taco Bell. The only Taco Bell in a 45-minute radius just opened next door. And he lifts up a Taco Bell bag. I acknowledged it and got as far away from that dude as I could. My scumbag brain assumed the worst and thought he was a substances dealer, and that was a code word. The Walmart weeper this summer, I switched to an evening unloader. If you want to get in shape, look no further. The power went out a whopping 3 times in 3 weeks. On our breaks, we'd work security, which really just consisted of turning people away when they tried to enter the store during a power outage. It was pretty mundane, but a customer broke down and sobbed when we asked her to leave before she finished shopping. Story 24. I'm an overnight manager at a supercenter in a bad part of town. One night, we're watching this guy stealing a flashlight from Sporting Goods on camera. We apprehend him, but after much searching, we can't find what he did with the item. So after a while, we have the guy sitting on a bench and he is kind of squirming around. Turns out he put the flashlight up inside. Hazmat suits were needed. Story 25. I worked customer service one night and had an older man call asking if he could refund a carton of eggs he bought because they didn't hatch after being under a light for a long time. He was serious enough to start screaming at me, and I had to have my manager take the phone. Story 26. I worked for Walmart Corporate. About 2 months ago, we held a hot dog eating competition to raise money for HIV/AIDS. Imagine 6 grown men shoving soggy wieners down their throat with about 100 Walmart employees cheering them on. At one point, a contestant gagged and spit out a piece of meat that he tried shoving down too fast. It was barbaric. Story 27. There was this guy working overnight in the dairy section, and one night he got pissed off with management and decided to drive his motorcycle through the store before he went home. It was pretty damn hilarious to see the looks on everyone's faces. Story 28. All right, so I was working the register in the garden area of a small store. It was always really slow, and I don't think half of the other workers knew it existed. We had a ton of regular customers that we saw all the time. It was almost the opposite of what you think when you think Walmart. Anyway, it was in a very ethnic area of Southern California. Not a lot of English was thrown around. There was this one guy that was pretty fresh off the border. He was always super jazzed when he came in over all the crap there was to buy. He had been coming for a couple weeks. I don't think he ever spent more than $5 in a purchase. So one day I see him come around the corner with the biggest jar of pickles I think we could legally sell. And this guy looked so damn amped about it. He slid it up onto the counter and just stared at me. I was like, hell yeah, man, that how crap's done around here? And motioned for him to bring it around so I could hit it with the price gun. He get an awkward angle on it and drops it straight on the floor. Pickles start flying damn everywhere. Then just starts blitzing for the exit. I mean, this guy was dipping so damn hard I can guarantee it's the fastest he's ever ran. I come around out of the little register area and watch him lay rubber through the store. The exit in the garden center was like 10 feet away, but this guy's heads for the exit on the other side of the store. I see him make it a good 80 yards and then turn the wrong way and run into the clothing department. It's a dead end, and he realizes it immediately. He was like a deer caught in a coffee shop. At first, he tries to duck behind the clothes racks, decides that's a terrible decision, and starts jetting the other direction for the door, and after a good 45 seconds, make his great escape to freedom. No one knew what was going on. The manager starts freaking out thinking there was a shooting or something, and I'm just standing there watching it unfold. I'm not sure how to react to it all just yet. I turn and look at the other customers in my line, and we all came to a fairly unanimous decision that it's the funniest thing any of us will ever see. And no ever even knew about it aside from us. Maintenance came and mopped up the pickles, and it was never mentioned again. Never saw that guy again. By the way he was running, I just assumed he was back in Mexico before my shift ended. Story 29. Not an employee, but about a month ago, my dad tweaked his knee at work and needed surgery. This resulted in him needing crutches for a little bit. Anyways, when we go to Walmart, he's complaining about his knee. So I tell him to grab the last motor scooter. As he goes over to grab it, some teenager, who certainly didn't need it, runs over and hops on it in front of my dad. My dad got super pissed and threw one of his crutches at the kid and hit him. My dad then got kicked out of Walmart for the rest of the night. Story 30. Walmart nonsense I endured as a service desk associate. 1. Couple came in to return a GameCube because their kid didn't like it. For any of the systems, we had to ensure that all the components were in place. So I proceed to go through the box. Console, check. Controller, check. AV cable, check. Topless Polaroid of the woman. I hand back to the couple. Power supply, check. Being a pro, I didn't even blink. They freaked, but once they realized I wasn't going to respond, they calmed down enough to complete the return. Once they were out of sight, earshot, I damn near wet myself. 2. Tail end of the academic year near a local, albeit sketchy university. 20-something comes in to return a futon. It's clearly been in use for several years, despite their protesting. At the time, if you pitched enough of a fit, a manager would put anything on a gift card for its current store value. Off the top of my head, I want to say $50, but it could have been $100. Anyway, this thing was disgusting. Every imaginable stain was clearly visible. To do this kind of no receipt return with no visible barcode, someone had to go get a UPC and then a supervisor had to use a key to override, approve the return. This happened around 10:30 p.m. when your second shift is usually wrapping up, got to be gone by 11 p.m. Anyway, the cash office lady was on her break, so all the cashiers were milling around whilst I waited on someone to either get the UPC or override the return. The whole time, the cashiers are making fun of the futon and busting on its condition. All the while, the customer is silently sitting there fuming as they take stabs at the mystery stains. The cashiers had no clue the customer was the individual associated with the futon. Anyway, the final cashier rolls up, takes one look, and is like, "Are we taking this back? Are we taking this back?" I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much," to which she loses it. She goes off just mentioning the most suspect stains. About this point, a manager walks up. To key in the override, I complete the transaction and give the customer their gift card. All of the cashiers lose it, just laughing and pointing. This college kid storms out, furious. Totally worth it for the store to eat the futon for this kid to have been some embarrassed. Story 31. I don't work at Walmart anymore, but I'll never forget this woman who frequented the store. Of all the weird people I saw, she had to be at the top. She wasn't from the US, never figured out exactly where she was from. She was bat-crap crazy. She was middle-aged and would be walking around in the dead of summer wearing a very heavy black coat, huge sunglasses, and huge over-the-ear headphones. If you asked her why she was wearing this, she would tell you that she didn't want to see or hear the hypocrisy going on in this country, or that she wanted to protect herself from the hate and intolerance in this country. As you can imagine, many people gawked at her. She stuck out like a sore thumb. She would flag one of us down and demand that we tell them to stop, and it would always begin, "In my culture, we don't stare at people, play music loudly, wear tight clothing, all things I've heard." We would tell her that we'd take care of it, and she'd just toddle off without another word. This would happen at least once a week. She seemed to always be in the store from the minute I got into the minute I left. Quite an odd woman. I felt bad for her. Story 32. My fiance works there and told me a story about a woman coming to the pharmacy with her kids all dirty and in their underwear. Not diapers, children in only underwear. She tried to get syringes from the pharmacy, and upon being told no, she flung herself on the floor screaming and crying and had to be escorted out and the police called. He didn't know what happened after that, unfortunately. Once I was in there using the restroom and this super obese child comes out of one of the stalls. No shoes on, holey shorts on, and a huge tank top falling off the kid's shoulders. I thought it was a boy, women's restroom, until the mom came in there and called her sis and said something about her shirt falling and everyone would see her boobies. Then the kid goes on her merry way through the store barefooted. People. Story 33. It was right before Christmas I was working there as a temp for the seasonal rush. I had a lady come to my checkout line with 3 carts full of DVDs, CDs, candy, food, all kinds of small stuff. She was acting really weird, and I could tell right away that she wasn't going to be able to pay for all of it. She was obviously on something, I assumed met. So, I started ringing it up. Didn't want to make her feel like I knew she wouldn't pay. She was saying things like, "My son will like that one," and mentioned some other relatives. It was sad, actually. Anyhow, I ran it all through the checker, and I was well over $3,000 when I finished the first cart. My shift manager came over, and we asked her if she was serious about buying this all, and she pretty much took off after that. Christmas, such a merry time, but not for all, especially at Walmart. Story 34. I worked in sporting goods many years ago. Guys come in and buy all our cheap guns. He flat out told me he resells them in the hood while working on houses. I told the manager and had the store cop talk to them. They were allowed to buy the guns anyway. Saw security video online of another Walmart where a guy would lower his pants and put the water nozzles up his ass on the water fountain. Asterisk. Our store found a turd in the water fountain. Was covering electronics and had to show a guy how a wall phone plugged in, repeatedly. Far too many women with their ass hanging out of shorts, skirts with no panties, nasty men that really stunk bad, and etc. 8-year-old kid sitting down on the candy display eating Kit Kats as fast as he could. When management came, he fought them and stuffed his face. People fighting over cheap detergent. I was written up for not being on the aisle because some woman went ape crap. These women attacked me running floats from a container truck in the back to the display. I literally could not run them fast enough. Somehow this was my problem Christmas rush, and backed up all to hell. I went up front and was able to check out more people than any 2 cashiers combined. I was somehow around $4 short. They tried telling me I somehow stole. I stood up and told them to duck off, did not get fired. I had enough and decided to get another job and not go back to school. My manager laughed at me and said, "There is no way you can get a better job." I had one within a week, and after not showing up for 3 weeks, he called me. I told him I was working for 3 times what I was getting, and there was a long pause on his end. Then he asked me if I would please still work a shift. I hung up. Story 35. I was a customer service manager, or CSM, for 3 or 4 years. CSMs are in charge of the cashiers, stockmen, and, surprisingly, customer service. Most of it was fine, nothing special. People wanting to return things. I'd approve unless it was grossly old or against policy. Then there was this guy. This guy was in his 40s probably, and at least 400 pounds. And he stunk. Anyway, he came in to return underwear. Used, obviously used, with skid marks and everything. He said the waistband didn't last. Well, yeah, they were size 38 and he needed a 50 at least. I denied the return on sanitary grounds, that we couldn't return used undergarments for any reason. That was true. Bras, panties, all unreturnable. I made a mental note to bleach the counter when he left and turned to leave. I then heard the counter creaking. I turned to find 400 pounds of that guy trying to climb the counter to attack me, while wheezing that my 220 pounds, 6'2" skinny ass had insulted him, and he was going to make me pay. Somehow, he made it over the counter, but landed face down on the other side. Still a bit shocked at what was going on, I put my foot on his back to keep him from getting up and called for management assistance. He was escorted out by the management and barred from the store for life. I got an extra 15-minute smoke break. I returned from break to find that guy's underwear still on the counter. No one wanted to touch them. I used the longest pair of tongs I could get from the kitchen area and threw the underwear and the tongs in the garbage compactor. By far the weirdest thing that ever happened to me. Story 36. I've worked for the company for over 4 years now, with about half of it on nights. So I've seen my fair share of stupid crap. The worst, best, was at a particular store that had an off-duty officer the company would employ for 12 hours, because the store was that eventful. On this fateful night, 4 gentlemen walked in obviously on something which wasn't uncommon. Most of the time, we let them get what they want and leave as long as you don't cause a fuss. They walk around the store for a while and arouse the suspicion of the officer, so he starts watching them on CCTV. They head over to the automotive waiting room where you would wait to get your car worked on. One of them brought a movie in. They play it on the TV out there. Well, this movie happened to be an adult film, and they all decided it was a good idea to whip out their little junk and starting pleasure himself. Now at this point, I asked him if you saw them doing this. Why didn't you go stop them right away? He was in as much disbelief as I assume most would be, and wanted to see how this situation could go from absolutely horrible to fantastic, and boy oh boy did one of them deliver. One of the gentlemen zipped his pants up and went into one of the automotive aisles and grabbed some brake fluid. Used, for cars and all. At this point is where the officer intervened and called for another cruiser so he could take them in. Story 37, once our plumbing backed up. The sewer started to pour out in our photo department, which was in the middle of the store. Soon the action alley was so covered in sewer water that we had to shut the aisle down. The managers started taking shop vacs from the shelf and suck up the sewer water into Rubbermaid totes. I was helping a fellow associate pick up a tote filled with poop water, and the handle broke on me, and I was splattered with poop, pee, and whatever else was in there. That was the end of my day. I got clothes and shoes off the rack and went the hell home. I was working overnight support and was the manager on duty. I was closing up our doors after lunch, about 3 a.m., and saw a car drive into the parking lot. Just a little bit behind him, a police car parked on the side of the parking lot. The car creeps up onto a van in the middle of the parking lot. All of a sudden, the man jumps out of the car and pulls a guy out of the van and starts wailing on him. The cop flips on his light and siren and zooms over to the fight. Backup arrives seconds later and both guys are flat on the ground. Turns out the guy in the van was having a meetup with the other guy's wife. Phone battery is about to die, so I'm posting this now before I lose everything I've written. Story 38. This is a bit different than you're thinking. I worked for Walmart for almost 10 years. Various positions over the years, but I was a manager for a lot of it. One of the strangest things I'd ever seen was a people greeter who was in a wheelchair and had a computer like Stephen Hawking. Every time someone came in, a robotic voice would say, "Welcome to Walmart." Another weird situation was when I started at a new store and saw a guy walk right out the front door with a television without paying for it. Policy at the time was to have the exit greeter try to stop them. This was a bad policy. I saw the greeter just stand there with a stupid look on her face. I went up to her and said, "What are you, blind?" Sure enough, she was blind. A blind person in a role that had some loss prevention responsibilities. I've seen a woman hike up her mother, squat, and take a crap right in the middle of the front end. One of our associates vomited into a layaway box and put it back in storage. When the customer came to pick up the layaway items, she picks the clothes up and starts shaking them, saying it's just dust. No, lady. Dust doesn't have peas in it. Saw a duty in the toilet about 2 feet long and as thick as an arm. It started on one end in the bottom of the toilet and snaked up the bowl and over the seat toward the floor. I cleared out the security cage one day and wanted to clearance out a bunch of stuff. Found a Game Genie for Sega Genesis underneath a cabinet that was in there. Some guy passed away in the parking lot and was there for like 3 days before someone complained. Story 39. Well, some of these are stories, but 1. Dude whacked it in sporting goods during the night shift. 2. Found used condom in the parking lot in a cart, was a cart pusher at the time, but didn't find it. 3. Heavily obese woman with her boobs damn near falling out. 4. Story of theft. Cashier stole $8,000 in one night. Little boy pissed in the drain in the bathroom. Drain was in my stall. The cashier simply cleaned out his register and left. I don't know if he cleaned it out completely or just took the large bills. If the register gets too full, you simply bundle up the cash and put it under the tray. The night managers must have noticed and found out he was the one who did it and was promptly fired. He somehow got let off with community service, though I don't know how much, and has to pay back all the money he took. He wasn't banned from the store because I saw him in there just a bit ago. I found out all this from a friend cashier because when this was going on, I was outside as a cart pusher, and I became a cashier a month ago. She told me he tried to buy a car from her friend as well. Story 40. In my area, our Walmart keeps getting bomb threats every Saturday and sometimes Tuesdays. They have to call the FBI and bomb sniffing dogs in from Pittsburgh, and it takes a good 4 hours or more. They're on the verge of shutting down because whoever is calling the threats in is using an app from their phone and using an out-of-area area code and fake email, so it's virtually untraceable. Technology. Story 41. One night, a drunk chick dropped her pants and took a piss right outside our electronics department because the guy cleaning the bathroom wouldn't let her in. On a separate night, a woman couldn't hold it and pooped the whole way to the bathroom from the front door. Story 42. I used to work in the garden center of Walmart. There was an apartment complex on the other side of our fence. I noticed a guy standing by the fence on the outside in the apartment complex. About 10 minutes later, another comes running from in the store, TV in hands, and chucks it over the 10-foot fence. His friend caught it and took off running into the complex. They earned that TV. Story 43. Not an employee, but I represent a company who has products inside Walmart, so I'm in there a lot. One day I was helping a slower woman. No real issues. She just wasn't very smart. After helping her, her 17-year-old daughter walked up, and I just happened to glance over as she stuck her hand into the front of her very classy pink camo pajama pants, wriggled, itched it around. At this point, I was like, whatever, that's gross scratching in public. But then she took her hand out, and it was covered in the grossest cottage cheese slime you've ever seen. I almost gagged and was staring wide-eyed as she ever so coyly wiped it on those camo pajama. Thinking that this was over, I shrunk back a little and tried to hurry her oblivious mother off, but alas, it was too late. The friction of the cottage cheese slime mixture and her unfortunate pants had created a strong, wafting smell. The girl gave an additional wipe to the counter, thinking the tuna smell must have been coming from her defiled hand. At this point, the smell has become so strong that other people are starting to notice. That entire department was disinfected with bleach, and I even bought them an odor neutralizer to leave on the counter. I almost walked straight out of the store and went home that day. Story 44. I used to work at Walmart, overnights for many years, and I've seen some interesting things. One that sticks in my head the most would be the young woman in a sundress running barefooted through the parking lot doing cartwheels. Nothing under the sundress, and it was December. Her companion was dressed properly, but clearly drunk. They had to be chased down through the store. The woman pulled her sundress up to expose her goods and started doing ballerina spins. Both took off running. Managers went after them again. Short while later, I found them in the alcohol aisle. She was on her knees to BJ for him for all she was worth. Interesting night. Story 45. I worked at Walmart here in Anchorage, Alaska, pushing carts for a few months. Sometime in December, we caught a group of guys hauling TVS over the fence in the garden area and loading them onto the back of a pickup truck. We saw them and told security. It was hilarious to me how casual they were about the whole thing. Story 46. While working at Walmart, I got to work and punched in. Noticed a strange smell out back. Went and got my friend in electronics, and we thought it smelled like gas. Went and got a manager, and they told me it was nothing. Hours later, people were still noticing it and complaining. I went to the ASM in charge, and they just yelled at me to get back to work. About an hour after that, I was working back at the deli, and we see workers pushing people out of the store. Turns out, there had been a gas leak, and they had just decided not to do anything about it for hours. We all had to stand outside in the pouring rain and wait for 2 hours while the fire department took care of it along with the gas company, and then eventually cleared us to go back in. A couple months later, I finally got sick of all the crap with management and quit. High-fived everyone I could on the way out. While skipping, my notice was a paper towel that just said, "I quit," in big purple Sharpie. They didn't find it till opening the next morning when there was a million things left to be done. Still makes me giggle. Story 47. 2 of them. One time, while working in the hardware department, a man came up and he stank really, really bad. Like within 10 feet, and it was a combination of sewage and vomit. He had jean shorts on, and there was liquid crap running down his legs and into his shoes. He kept asking my coworker and I really odd questions. I remember where the duct tape was when it was behind him, whether the paint could be used to paint carpet, and why the flowers. Just that, why the flowers. He made us so uncomfortable that we just noped the duck out to lunch. Another time, working in the pet department, my primary area, late at night, around 9 p.m., an old bathrobe-wearing woman asked me where the cat food was, and I pointed it out to her. I had just zoned the aisle, everything brought to the front, and looking nice. And I was cleaning the fish tanks for a few minutes when my boss came up to me and asked me what happened in the cat aisle. I walk over to it, and there are about 40 pyramids of canned cat food. This woman had apparently took as many cans as she could off the shelf and made small little pyramids all over the damn aisleway. Story 48. I don't work at Walmart, but I went into Walmart to get something for my son. I asked the younger fellow in the game section if they had a wheel for the Wii U, since my son had just got Mario Kart 8 for his B-Day and loves it, and asked for a wheel with the extra birthday money he had received. He walked me over to the section with all the controllers and starts beeping away on one of those handheld beeper price things. He drops his hands to his sides, look up in the air, sighs loudly, and starts mumbling. Then out of nowhere shouts, "Damn, Linda! Damn you can go damn yourself! You are so stupid!" He turned to me and said the stupid idiot I work with has no clue how to do anything. He throws his, what I can only assume is a few $100 device on the ground, and it breaks into pieces and storms of saying, "I will be right back, I'm going to call that stupid idiot and put her in her place." I backed away slowly and left. I went to Target and got it. Story 49. Not an employee was recently at Walmart and a kid crap in the aisle. Now I didn't see that, but I did witness the defeated Walmart employee as he walked right through the dookie with a pallet of boxes, spreading the crap everywhere. No ducks were given. Story 50. I worked near the pet department and would help this old, mentally ill woman get a bag of those tiny guppies about twice a week. Never thought much of it. Until one day when I saw her on the other end of the store eating the live fish from the plastic bag. Didn't get her any more fish after that. Story 51. Not an employee, but I watched a kid set the book aisle on fire. Complete a hole. Just so people understand, the kid was 17. That's still a kid. Story 52. A kid poop on a soccer ball and kick it all around the store. The whole damn store had to be shut down. Oh, I forgot. An even weirder one. Some dude put a bunch of DVD players in a basket and snuck that basket into the man's room. He then, one by one, managed to take every player out of the box and sneak it out of the store. He seemed to grab a hold of one of those return item stickers. And then after he did all that, he pooped in one of the boxes. Hardcore. I can't believe that actually happened. Story 53. 1. Not an employee, but I saw these teenage punks going around and yelling into people's ear. They went up to this old black man who was just reading the back of a DVD. The kid screamed at the top of his lungs into this man's ear. Without flinching, this man hooked him in the face, proceeded to grab him by his collar, removed his belt, and started whipping him, yelling, "I'll teach you what your mama failed to teach you, idiot!" The kid's friend jumped the old guy and pushed him on the ground, and they took off. It was hilarious while it lasted. 2. My friend who used to work at a Walmart told me the story of how on the night shift, this dude tried to steal a whole DVD display by dressing in a blue polo and taking a pallet jack to the display. He leisurely strolled past everyone while pulling this giant display full of DVD out the front door. He was arrested while he was trying to load it into his truck. Security just called the cops and decided to wait for them to show up. Story 54. So I've worked at Walmart for about 10 months now. You people think that walking through the store is the easiest way to spot a weirdo. Well, trust me, you haven't seen anything until you visit the service desk during the summer. My first week training, I saw a slightly heavier woman with one leg come in with booty shorts and a half top on. My second week, I witnessed a family fight. I'm talking Hatfield and McCoy type crap. Some of the things that go on don't register as weird until you sit down later that night and let it all sink in. Story 55. A pallet of ammonia-based cleaner stacked above bleach, and the top pallet was leaking. Anyone with the slightest common sense should know not to stack these one on top of the other because it results in the creation of chlorine gas. A disaster waiting to happen. That was the day that I quit that job. $9 per hour was not enough for me to risk my life because of someone's industrial strength stupidity. Story 56. I worked in the photo lab at a Walmart, so I ended up seeing a ton of weird ass crap and naked people, but nothing topped my manager. A very special fellow who, during my interview, I crap you not, was eating a box of crayons like they were damn Twizzlers. I just about said damn it and packed it up right then and there, but the place was within walking distance. The lab tech position paid sort of okay, and we kind of needed the added little boost in income at the time, so I stuck it out. Got the job, and had to watch this mother ducker go to the goddamn craft aisle for snacks every day. Wouldn't have been so bad if he was just some other employee and not the manager of the department. But this was the guy telling everyone else what to do, and generally making a huge mess of things. Found out later on that he used to be pretty on the ball until he was in a motorcycle accident with major brain damage and no one had the heart to fire him. After that, I just felt bad. Story 57. Not really seen, but a friend of mine worked at Walmart a couple years ago. One day, this guy came in and told my friend that he'd pay her $100,000 a year to marry him. Obviously, she declined. The next day, he called the store to talk to her, but she wasn't at work, so her coworkers gave this guy her work schedule. He came in a few times to try to convince her. He was almost a stalker. Story 58. Was working in the TL department years ago. and a car came in for a typical oil change, 15-point express job, rabble, basically vacuum and top off the washer fluid, then wash the windshield. No biggie, right? I go to pull the car in and start vacuuming, and when I lift the driver's side floor mat to vacuum all the carpet crap, I'm greeted by a sandwich baggie containing a balloon, a spoon, and a syringe with needle. So I ask the manager, who transferred from a much nicer store up north, what I should do, and he simply replies, "Rants? The owner must be diabetic." Yeah, because everyone knows diabetics carry spoons with the insulin that comes in a tied-off balloon. We also had a lady who straight lived in her car who would come for oil changes and, no joke, barely enough room to get in on the driver's side. She had so much dirty clothes piled on shredded papers, topped with cat feces. Yes, because she had 3 cats living in this 1994 Chevy Lumina with her. Story 59. College kids riding bikes at night around the store. I'm not gonna lie, I tried to stop one of them with my pallet. We've had a dog get let loose in my store. People would bite into fruit, apples, and pears mostly, then putting them back with the others as if it never happened. Story 60. Not the weirdest, but one of the dumbest things I ever saw was when a man brought in a group of kids and they started playing hide and seek. I guess the dude was running some sort of daycare and thought it was appropriate to bring the kids to play hide and seek in a department store. Management told him he had to leave, and he was shocked that he was even doing anything wrong in the first place. Some people just blow my mind with how dumb they can be. Story 61. Walked into woman's bathroom and witnessed an old woman wiping her ass with paper towels at the sink. I was stuck as a door greeter one day, and a dude dressed up in full clown garb walks in. You could hear him walking through the store. I was manning the fitting room, and a woman walked up. I asked her how she was. She kisses the bra that was hanging off the counter and walks away. Fitting room again. Woman with Tourette's in one of the stalls cussing loudly like a sailor. In HBA, I was stocking cosmetics, and a man in his 40s wearing short shorts and a woman's blouse is picking out makeup. Electric shopping cart catching on fire. Power going out due to a suicidal squirrel. Old man crapped his pants undressed in the family bathroom and ran out of the store only wearing his boxers. And that is only some... Story 62. Nothing will ever beat the day I went shopping during my break. I was a Walmart cashier at this time, and saw a lady shopping in the meat department with 3 small monies on leashes hopping around her cart and back. Even my janitor bro just shook his head and said Walmart and followed her the entire duration of her visit, waiting for a monkey to inevitably leak through their diaper. Story 63. I used to manage meat, seafood department at Walmart. Once, a customer got all of our lobsters. You don't have to pay for them at the seafood counter, and released them in the toy aisle. I had to catch 6 lobsters with no bands on their claws. You can't sell fresh seafood once it has been taken away from the counter. Officially, I wrote them out of inventory and disposed of them as required in the playbook. Reality. So I steamed all 6. My employees ate like kings that night. Story 64. I'm not an employee, but one time some guy was pleasure himself in the book aisle. Someone said it was to a self-help book, too. Another time a kid ate like 20 samples of these mini corn dogs in the span of a few seconds when the lady wasn't looking. He vomited profusely not long after. I don't go to Walmart anymore. Story 65. Worked at Walmart, but not for Walmart as part of CPI Corp, the photo studio. The studio was right in the entrance, so I saw everyone coming and going. I got lots. Security being stabbed with a needle. Thankfully, he didn't contract anything. Baby born in the Walmart bathroom. Hit national news for that young girls, like maybe 10 in skirts so short it didn't cover their ass, a customer who insisted I call a certain employee. The employee was me. They just apparently forgot what I looked like. A greeter chasing a woman into the parking lot and manhandling her to get her purse. She did steal, but got away because he was assaulting her and basically attempting to illegally take her belongings. Multiple police guns drawn moments, among other crazy crap. Story 66. That was my first job. We had 3 regular customers that would come in after 10 p.m. a couple times a week that really stood out. One was dressed in tiger print clothing and had his face painted like a tiger. Don't know if it was a job or just crazy. A homeless man who said he was a voodoo shaman and would try to sell people cheap plastic statues that were spray-painted gold. And the last was a skinny old biker who would tell anyone who would listen that the Dukes of Hazzard was based on his family. I'm pretty sure he was on meth. There was also the drunk guy who got kicked out after he whipped his junk out while playing the Guitar Hero demo. Twice. Story 67. One time while working in the back room, everyone was talking about how bad it smelled. Nobody could figure out why it smelled so bad. Until finally, while cleaning out the bins, they found a human crap on a pallet. It was pretty big and it looked like it had been there for a while. So we all assume someone took a crap in the back room, but nobody knows who. Story 68. Mother left special needs son playing PlayStation and electronics. Then instead of gathering him herself, just went to service and had them page us to bring him up. Went to open games case for a guy and smelled not a fart, but crap. On the ground, he must have left a little slip down his shorts. The janitor lady with the greenest teeth ever cleaned it, with a smile on her face. Story 69. I remember working at my local Walmart when I was in high school. I used to see these same kids, around my age, come in every day and hang out at the electronics section, and afterwards head to the McDonald's located in the store. Little did I know that those kids were taking merchandise into the McDonald's, opening up the packages and hiding everything they snatched in there to-go bags and walking out of the store. This went on for almost 2 months, until a McDonald's employee caught them in the act. Story 70. One of my friends, coworker, was using the restroom, and a little girl stuck her head under the stall my friend was using. My friend told the girl repeatedly to stop and get out of her stall, but the girl continued to just stare at her. She got more angry each time she said it since the girl was not listening to her. Eventually, the mom tells her she shouldn't be talking to her daughter that way, and asking if she worked there so she could go complain to management. That blew my mind. Dear employees of Walmart, what is the weirdest Walmartian you have encountered? Story 1. I had a guy come through my line wanting to buy a Flowbee, that 90 vacuum haircut thing. He wanted to barter with me for it. I tried telling that corporate sets the prices, but he seemed to think I was personally profiting from it. He was extremely irate. He finally says, "Fine, I'm not going to buy it then." I got a lot of people like that think I control the prices or care if they buy something or not. Story 2. Not an employee, but I was shopping in there one night and this lady was pushing a shopping cart with a baby car seat thing in it. She had a bag of Cheetos opened and was eating them, pushing the cart. I saw her out of the corner of my eye grab a Cheeto, reach down and give it to the baby. I was thinking what the heck when she reached in and got another, and then this tiny black hairy arm comes out. She had a freaking baby monkey dressed in baby clothes in her shopping cart with a veil covering it up so you couldn't tell. Just casually feeding it Cheetos while doing some midnight shopping, I guess. Story 3. The guy that brought back a wooden toilet seat because it was cracked. He had the receipt which showed it was purchased 7 years ago. We refunded his money. Story 4. So I don't work at Walmart, but I used to work at its largest national size comparative, and we only have a slightly different color scheme to this works to an extent. It has to be the dude who walked up to with a fake tit strapped to his chin, alternating between talking and sucking on it, and asked me if we had a certain anime, given that A, we don't carry anime, and B, I later found out that the title he was looking for was taboo adult film from the early 90s. I had to send him away. I don't know why he was walking around with a fake boob neck apparatus, nor why he expected us to carry hardcore adult film, but damn it, he was entertaining. Story 5. I worked at Walmart for about 3 months. In that time, there was a man with no pants, someone sleeping in a shopping cart, and some very mean Amish people. Story 6. My mom works at a Walmart. She has a lady who comes in almost daily, scooters around and randomly yells at products. I saw her sternly lecturing a shampoo bottle when I went to meet my mom for lunch once. She's always pretty chipper when talking with people, but some inanimate objects just really gets her goat, I guess. Story 7. Okay, I worked for Walmart for 5 years. In that time, I met lots of strange, funny, interesting people. The one that stands out to me the most is a guy that I affectionately nicknamed Fresh Breath Bob. He would come in and steal, buy as much mouthwash as he could carry to the end of the parking lot and proceed to drink it all. He would get hammered and belligerent, but his breath was just so fresh. Story 8, not the weirdest, but definitely memorable. Worked at the customer service desk, and late on Valentine's evening, a guy comes in absolutely dejected. I ask him how I can help him, and he puts an unopened box on the counter with a receipt and says he needs a refund. It was a Thigh Master for his wife on Valentine's Day. Took everything I had to not laugh while I gave him his money back. Story 9. I worked at a Walmart in Plano. One 4th of July, I was working the registers, and a woman came into the store wearing only a string bikini. This alone would not have been the strangest thing, but she was about 5 feet 4 inches and weighed 300 pounds. Not just that, but her complexion was stark white. The bathing suit she was wearing made it look like a rubber band stretched to the breaking point around an oversized marshmallow. Story 10. I was department manager of general merchandise at a neighborhood market a couple years ago. Had this old lady come in and she was furious that we were no longer carrying a specific flavor of cat food. She talked to the CSM and demanded that we order some for her. CSM told me which one she wanted, so I got on my Walmart app and managed to find a UPC. It was not traded, but I could still order it, so I found her and asked how many she would like me to order. She replied, "You can't help me, you're not in charge of pets." And I told her, "Actually, I am over the pet department, and I'd be happy to place a special order for you," she told me. "Don't argue with me. The customer is always right," and stormed off back into the store to look at more cat food. Story 11. I worked at Walmart in the late 90s for a year in the electronics department. We had a guy come in every week and buy something from our department. He would hold an employee hostage for at least an hour for whatever item he wanted to buy. Every insignificant detail had to be questioned and debated no matter the product. Portable cassette player, universal remote, etc. The very next day, he would always bring it back complaining it didn't work how he was told. And not just complaining, he would go livid about it and threaten to sue if he didn't get his way. Turns out this was some elaborate ruse to get a chance to hit on the woman who worked the customer service desk. Let's call her Rachel, and he was married. The days she wasn't working is when he would actually come to the department and browbeat us like we had done something wrong. He eventually stopped when Rachel quit. Story 12. Old couple walked in. Man was leading his, I assume, wife with a leash, like collar and everything. Now I can't account for everything they did in the store because I can't wander. But coworkers were talking about barking and petting, hopefully the not heavy kind. I'm all for people having their kinks, but seriously, kids are in here. Keep that crap at home or somewhere where everyone around you is okay with that. Story 13. I was a janitor. Was called to clean crap off the wall in the restroom. Great. Only it was in the woman's restroom off the employee break room. Some person I work with and see on a daily basis held crap in their hand and smeared it on the wall. So strangest wall Martian? Some coworker of mine. Story 14. I've got two. One for the people of Walmart and one for the employees of Walmart. First, people. My best friend works at Walmart. He sent out a text to me on Black Friday of last year. I'm paraphrasing. So these two ghetto ladies start a fight in cosmetics with each other. At first they're arguing, calling each other names. Then Lady A starts trying to smack Lady B. Lady B picks up her son by the arms and swings him at Lady A. Lady A catches the kid, tears him out of Lady B's arms, puts him in a cart, and pushes him down the aisle behind her. Lady B then yells, "Don't you touch my son! I want to go home!" Story 15. There was a lady that came in very regularly and demanded everything be double or even triple bagged and would have a very loud meltdown when a cashier didn't know this was her preference. Also, an older woman who had crap fall out of her pants as she walked past my checkout lane. Story 16. Ever seen the scary movie with the guy who has the ducked up hand and touches all the food? I was checking out at Walmart once years ago and the cashier had both hands like that. Short arms too. I just remember feeling so awkward watching him try and pick up the items to scan them, then bag them. Felt sorry for the guy, but that was for sure the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. Story 17. During my one summer working at Walmart, I was approached by a man in his mid-50s who asked where he could find tiramisu containers. I never heard of such a specific item. So I asked if he wanted Tupperware and walked with him to the aisle where they could be found. Along the way, he proceeded to say the most stereotypical Italian phrases. Bene, bravo, mamma mia, etc. When we arrived, he thanked me and the other associate, a college-aged girl, who tagged along and gave me his card. It was plain white with only his name and address. We were invited to his house for music, tiramisu, and romance. We didn't go. He then bought, I kid you not, at least 30 Tupperware containers. A month later, while stocking, a strange Italian accent behind me told me to stick my hands up. This same guy returned and wanted to know where he could find tiramisu containers. I asked if he wanted Tupperware, and he proceeded to buy 30 more. I still wonder why. Story 18. I worked at Walmart all through college in the frozen dairy section. We had this lady we called the crazy chicken and rice lady. She would come in and buy every single Marie Callender's chicken and rice bake. I'm talking about every single box. If we didn't have any, which it usually took at least a week to get more, she would demand to see a manager and then commence to yell at them. She once threw a frozen dinner at an employee just for saying that we were out of them. Needless to say, we tried to hide whenever we saw the crazy chicken and rice lady. Story 19. Partially sighted blind man who could make out shapes but not see well enough to shop on his own. Had to be assisted, always by a male. This was because he would make very inappropriate comments about all women. He had a fat girl fetish and would ask you to tell him how certain people looked. He'd been banned from every other grocery store in town. Eventually, he was banned from ours as well. Story 20. Ever been to a Walmart in Greenville, Mississippi? I've seen some crap, man. In these areas, walking into a Walmart is like visiting a different planet. Speaking of weird growths, one of the worst Walmartians I saw was this guy who looked like he was attacked by a tiger or something. Large claw-like rips across his shirt, and the end of his pants had that flared ends look, like they caught on fire. One of his pant legs was apparently burned all the way up to his knee. Picture it like the guy had one leg as shorts and the other leg down to ankle. He had this massive purple boil-type growth that covered the entire left side of his face. I hope I painted a good mental picture of this. Story 21. Had a woman come in wanting to print photos, but she was convinced that our machines weren't safe and that she would be hacked again. In all my idiot glory, I asked, was she hacked before and that released the almighty conspiracy rant about how this Indian man was hacking her and posting her stuff online? She also claimed to have photos of this man and his wife. She printed off those photos as proof for the police. The photos were stock images from Google. It's amazing what mental illness can do. Story 22. Not an employee, but a girl that I know told me about how on her birthday, she and her friends went into Walmart, pissed on the floor, and left. She thought it was hilarious. I thought it was gross and inconsiderate. Story 23. I worked at a Walmart in Tennessee for about a year, and there are a few that come to mind. 1. I worked in the electronics section with about 5 other people, and whenever we got wind that he was coming, we scattered trying to remain out of sight. We called this man Stinky because, well, he smelled like he hadn't taken a shower in a few weeks. He always had questions about something in our section, but never bought anything. I myself was one of the unlucky few that got cornered by him a few times, and every time his was one of the worst experiences I had helping a customer. He was very old and dyed his hair shoulder-length hair black, but it was never kept up, so he had nasty white roots. Mixed with his black, rotten teeth you could smell from a few steps away. He would talk for way too long, and we would always try to see if he wanted us to check if something was in stock in the back so we could escape and never return until he left the store. I hated the fact that no one wanted to even talk to this man, but goddamn, that smell was no joke. 2. We regularly had mountain folk come into the store, and you could tell that they were related, married, and had kids together. 3. Husband and wife with matching facial hair. It was groomed. Story 24. Overnight stalker in a Florida Walmart here. A girl, quite pretty, comes in some leather bondage-type lingerie on a dog leash, being strolled around by older addicts as she barks for them all over the store. She was asked many times if she was okay or needed help, and she just barked at us. They paraded her all around the store for about an hour, bought her a chew toy, and left. It was 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Story 25. I work in the photo lab. I have this one customer who comes in weekly. She recently lost her brother. He was murdered at a football game for trying to stop a girl getting beaten by her boyfriend. It was an awful situation, and this woman is still obviously grieving and working through her loss. Anyways, she came in a few weeks ago to print off some more pictures of her brother, and I think nothing of it. She ordered her normal 50 photos and a poster. Everything is going well until the poster starts printing. As it's printing, I notice that it's coming out just solid black. That can't be right, I say to myself. I open up her order in the computer, look at the file for the poster, and lo and behold, it's just solid black. She must have made a mistake, I thought to myself as I canceled the poster, not wanting to waste all that paper and ink for a solid black. When she comes back to pick up her order, I tell her that there was a problem with the poster she ordered. The file came through as a solid black image. She says that can't be right and proceeds to pull up the picture on her phone. She hands me the phone, I look at it and see a solid black image. She then tells me that the previous night, she called out to her brother's spirit. I felt him wrap his arms around her and took this picture of them in the mirror, in the complete dark. I feel for this lady, I really do. I even printed her solid black and let her have it for free. But the fact that she was so intent that there was actually something in the picture was heartbreaking. I hope she is able to process her loss and come through it okay. Story 26. Don't work at Walmart, but several years ago, my cousin worked third shift, and it was a pretty rural area, so the place was practically abandoned 95% of the time, excluding workers. And me being a bored teenager with nothing better to do, would often go and hang out with my cousin as he did stocking jobs and the like. And the higher-ups at the store either didn't know or didn't care that I was there with him. Never went in back or nothing, just tagged along as his did his thing and chit-chatted. There were several incidents I experienced with my cousin that still make me think, what in the duck, to this day. 1. While he was restocking Diary, a man came up to him to inquire about the steaks they had. Seemed pretty normal until I hear, well, I like them rare. Do they taste good rare? And look over to see him ripping open the cellophane wrapping and proceed to take a huge hunk out of the steak and swallow it after several seconds of very loud, open-mouthed chewing. He then proceeded to shrug and look mildly disappointed before wandering off. 2. Another night, right after his shift started, it was unusually busy compared to most other nights. And we hear a ruckus coming from a few aisles over and wander over to see 2 women frantically grabbing thongs off the racks and stuffing them down their shirts, into their purses while security was trying to pull them away. 3. This final one is actually the one that made my cousin quit. He was going around the refrigerated section taking note of what needed restocking while I trailed along, and this woman comes up and taps me on the shoulder and asks if I work there. She looks pained and a bit distraught. I quickly point her over to my cousin, and she goes over and asks if he can hold her hand. He asks why, but she just basically begs him to hold her hand over and over, looking more and more frantic. Eventually he relents, and as soon as he let her take his hand, she lets out an audible sound of relief, and we first hear, then smell, and finally see that she had simultaneously pissed and crapped herself as soon as she had taken his hand. He literally threw his name tag on the ground and grabbed me and stomped to the front, yelling for the GM, and told her he quit and that some crazy idiot had just pissed and shat in his section and walked out with me in tow. Story 27. This lady who came into the store late at night with her 9 children and bought a bunch of $500 gift cards and then immediately lost them and the receipt in the 10 steps to the door. She tried to fight me and my manager. Then when they told her they were going to call the police, she sat in the front of the store staring us down for hours. She'd send one of her heathen kids in every little while to harass me. She would show up constantly after that and scream until security had to remove her and ban her from the store. Story 28, former cashier here. I was in a rural New Mexican town near the Texas border. There was a man that the cashiers had all nicknamed Catman. Catman was weird. He had a salt and pepper bowl cut, parted straight down the middle, and stopped at about the middle of his ears. He had a thick Walter Cronkite mustache that matched the salt and pepper coloration of his hair. Catman came in about 3 times a week. He'd never have a full cart. It was always mostly empty. His groceries came out to be around $70 every time. It was mostly cat food. About 20 or 30 cans of wet cat food scattered the basket, and a big bag of dried food was usually on the bottom rack. He'd occasionally buy human food like frozen pizzas or dinners, but not much. At the register, he was always very quiet and reserved. I can't recall ever seeing him buy cat litter with all that cat food. Story 29. I used to work as a supervisor for electronics in Walmart. Our store had a hobo colony living in the small wooded area next to our store. It was pretty common for customers to complain about being heckled, or employees expressing concern at night because the hobos would get, well, violent from time to time. One night, I was working the customer service counter on a suspicious TV returned when one of the cart attendants came running in, wide-eyed, saying that the hobos are fighting each other with flamethrowers. Turns out the hobos had stolen hairspray from the cosmetics department and were attacking each other with them and then beating each other. It sticks. Story 30. I work at Walmart. One time I was pooping in the only stall in the men's room. I hear a guy come in and wait for me to be done. I must have taken too long because all of a sudden I see his pants drop and then crap hit the floor. The gentleman then pulled his pants up and left. Story 31. You know, I still have trouble believing how many moms will bring in 3 to 5-year-old children at 2 a.m. to go clothes shopping. It irks me as a soon-to-be father. That being said, during my last 6 months on overnight maintenance for Walmart, I'm just damn shocked by the sheer stupidity addicts have in this area. One tried to dig his knife through the cardboard, wood-like back to the video game case, and ran away in a panic when a stalker was like, "Please don't do that, sir." Another actually got a cart full of stolen junk food and electronics, past the sensors without any alarms going off, but he circled the parking lot screaming for his buddy. So security followed he and his cart until he panicked and jumped into a BMW, leaving the cart. Then there was the time I had to sit by a stalker for a half an hour because some meth head kept bugging her, and the last time he saw her box cutter, took out his own knife and started flipping it around, basically saying, "Hey, let me show you a real knife. Damn tweakers, man." Story 32. We call her the cat piss lady. She comes in about twice a week smelling like a litter box that hasn't been changed in a year. She will spend hours in the store just walking around talking to people before departing with her 37 cans of great value tuna. She thinks she owns the place. Apparently, she owns 25 cats, but that could just be a myth. We have someone sanitize the cart she uses after she leaves the store, just to make sure that other customers don't give to smell that ungodly nose-shattering stench that leaked onto the cart throughout the hours she was shopping for. Story 33. I did a brief 3 months as a Walmart cashier. Craziest thing was just after I finished training and was on the cash register for the first time. I was slow, not a good cashier, I'll go ahead and say. I finished up a guy's purchases and an old lady step up next. I put on my customer service smile, ask how she's doing. She mumbles something I can't understand, so I'm just smiling as I scan when she tells me to wipe that smile off your face. And some other stuff I can't remember now. Grumpy old lady did not like the kindness I tried to extend. Also had a young lady carrying her toddler. Mom was yapping on her cell phone, and the kid was holding a toy which she was chewing on while I was scanning. Got done scanning the items on the belt. Tried to tell Mom the price, and she has to finally hang the phone up and hand me the toy said toddler just had in her mouth. Mom set the toy on the belt. I go to pick it up, not really looking at it, and stuck my fingers in something cold and slimy. Kind of felt like pudding. I don't have any idea what I stuck my fingers in that day, but from that point on, I wore latex gloves at the register. Story 34. Worked at the Walmart for 5 years. Aside from the usual trashy people, the one that sticks out to me was the Spectre. She was a tall woman, probably in her 70s. She would come in and shop always wearing a white dress and a corset, synced up extremely tight. Over the dress and wearing white face paint and lipstick, like kabuki makeup. This wasn't just one time coming home from a play or something. This was several times a week for years. Nobody I know at the store ever talked to her. We were all too afraid. Story 35. I just had a fat lady in a Mart cart try stealing a ham by putting it between her legs this Thanksgiving. We caught her, but we didn't want the ham back. Story 36. I'm really late, but I met the essence of Forshawn. There was this morbidly obese guy who had an electric wheelchair. His shirt didn't cover his massive hairy belly, and he had a neckbeard to repel even the most disgusting of women. He smelled like he hadn't showered in weeks. He was in line, and as I was passing by, the cashier asked me to get a cart for him. I didn't see how he could use one, so I just said, "Do you mean a regular push cart?" And he interjected with, "Yes, you damn idiot." I thought whatever and brought one, and we loaded it up, and I had to help him out. On the way, he said, "Do you vote?" I said, "I'll be old enough next election." He said, "Don't listen to the bullcrap Democrats try to sell you. Did you know Abraham Lincoln was a Republican? I bet they didn't teach you that. I bet you thought he was a Democrat." I was pretty much ignoring his crap at this point, but he kept going and even told me some websites to find out what the government was really doing. I remember thinking it was funny how he was complaining but paid for his food with government money. He then yokes me to check out the pooper on a lady that was like damn 50. Eventually we get to his vehicle. It was a heap of crap. It was one of those vans that looks like box. It was grayish, but with a crap ton of dents and missing paint. He tells me to slide the door open, and there isn't anything in the back except a piece of plywood and a carpet that had never been cleaned. He made me pull out the plywood to use as a ramp and said to put the groceries in the front seat. The front seat was trash heap of fast food waste, and there was a pipe and a grinder sitting there too. Story 37. I worked produce for almost 3 years. Once a month, I had a run-in with a customer about cucumbers. During food stamps week, it wouldn't matter how much we'd order. We would always run out of loose cucumbers about 2 days into food stamps week and not get another load of cucumbers until the next week, no matter what. She would always show up during the time we ran out of cucumbers and pitch a fit and accuse us every month of waiting for her to show up to run out of the cucumbers. She accused us of hiding them on her, that we were deliberately messing with her. No matter what we said, it didn't matter. We were doing this on purpose, and she was going to have us all fired. She always had the habit of arriving during my shift, and I was usually alone. So after a while, whenever I saw her, I would hide in the back room. Story 38. Many months ago, I worked for Walmart. I was department manager of hardware and paint. Anyways, the guy who always stocked my area was named Bill. Bill was an older guy, but a damn hard worker and always left my departments looking nice. So I always made it a point to be nice to him and give him positive feedback. Anyways, I show up early one day and I see Bill show up for work on a pink bedazzled bicycle wearing pink clothes from head to toe. He even had a milk crate he had spray painted pink on the back seat. I never asked him about it and still continued to treat him the same. The rumor was he was more or less homeless by choice, and his wife had passed away, so that was the deal with all pink. No idea how true it was. I was just grateful he did his job and made my life easier. Story 39. Never saw him, but there were a few months where someone would crap in the same urinal. Didn't catch the guy, but I came close. I only think it was the same guy because it just started all of a sudden and it happened like 5 times and then stopped. Story 40. While working store standards, fancy name for a cart, I had a sketchy guy come up to me asking for a large box, saying it was for some rabbits he was selling to someone. Before I could respond, he spotted one beside a cart corral and ran over to it. Thinking it was kind of strange, my coworker and I went on our way. A few minutes later, we heard a loud squealing noise that was definitely not human. We looked around to find a man with his arms around the belly of a squirming, mid-sized pig. He proceeded to throw the pig into the box, which he had placed in the trunk of someone's car, the buyer, I would assume, and then get in his old beat-up truck and peel off. Story 41. As a long-term Walmart associate, I have a list of favorites, but 2 come to mind. The Mullet family. Mom, Dad, 2 boys, and a girl. All had amazing mullets and easily the best part. They always arrived in an El Camino. That's right, with the seats in the back, like my name is Earl. Of course, this is several years before the show came out, so they might have inspired that part of the show for all I know. The wrestler magician. This one was and still is an enigma. A younger guy looking like Jack White would come into the store every couple months in a wrestling singlet, tall boots, and a top hat. He would wander the store wringing his hands together like Mr. Burns and wish random people a happy holiday greeting in a high-pitched voice. It was never a holiday that was close. He wore a different singlet every time, and if he wasn't special needs, then he had the act down perfect. This led to the enigma. Either he had acting chops that made DiCaprio's performance in What's Eating Gilbert's G seem like a bit performance in Twilight, or he had a guardian with the best, darkest sense of humor ever. Either way, pure excellence. Story 42. There was a guy we called Playa Guy, not because he was ghetto, but because he referred to everyone as Playa. Playa, can you put this card on my phone? Thanks, Playa. You the best, Playa. So one day, I'm with my buddy Josh in Connection Center, the cell phone part of electronics. He walks up to us and we see him approaching. We give him the old, "How's it going?" He looks Josh in the eye and inquires, "Have you seen my escorts?" Josh, a man with the mouth of a sailor who is arguably the funniest person I ever met, had no response. Usually he's on top of things, but all he can muster out is, no, I have not seen your escorts. Luckily, he later returned to let us know his escorts had been located and that them escorts be nothing but trouble. Story 43. Not an employee, but I once saw a very large man on a cart pursuing a very large woman on another cart. The 2 of them were having a screaming fight with him, chasing her around the store. Story 44. I was working in the HBA department on Christmas Eve. The store closes at 10, but you can't actually leave until all the customers are out of the building. So it's about 10:15, and there is one portly Walmartian in a nightgown that I presume was high on painkillers trying to complete her gift shopping. She's by the perfumes as she motions me over with a waggle of her arm fat. She asks me if she can spray perfume on my wrist so she can see how it smells. I ask why she doesn't just use her own wrist. She says she already sprayed perfume on them and it won't work. I begrudgingly oblige her request in hopes of expediting her wonderfully procrastinated gift buying, and she sprays perfume on my wrist and slowly rises it up to her nose for a big whiff. I still remember her hot breath on my hand. Oh yeah, and there was also the time somebody took a crap in the shoe department. Story 45. I worked at Walmart for a few years, but one instance definitely stands out to me as one of my weirdest encounters ever. I am working one of the few checkout lanes, and an older lady comes through with a cart full of groceries. Business as usual, however, I noticed that as I was checking her items, there was a puddle of what looked like orange juice underneath her cart. As soon as I noticed the orange juice, one of my coworkers walks by and says she will clean up the mess. She grabs a roll of paper towels and starts to clean up, and this is when the customer starts to act like she wants to hurry up with the transaction. That is when I notice it, though. One of the customer's socks was yellow, and as I looked up, I saw that her pants leg was wet too. The lady had wet herself, but by this time, my coworker had already committed to cleaning up the mess.